Good morning, it's Brian here. It's the Art of Startup War. You are back again. If you are an investor and you are looking for the hottest startups in the world, companies that we have already invested in and we rate massively highly, you are here because you are about to hear from one. And if you're an entrepreneur that's wondering, how can I possibly build a unicorn? I want to learn from people who are doing it right now and doing it in an explosive way. You are here because you are about to hear from one. Ben, over at Staple, we are so pleased that we've invested in you. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Okay, fantastic. So we're going to go through the hero's journey a little bit, and we're going to talk about kind of where you came from and how you got to this moment right now. But before we talk about that, just bring us into the world of Staple. Talk us about the genesis of the idea and what it is to consumers. What massive problem are you saving?
So we focus on data capture and automating document processes for enterprises. Now, we work with a lot of multinationals and innovative companies who have this real problem around processing data from a range of different unstructured and semi-structured sources. Very difficult to automate and still very heavily reliant on humans to get this information into a format that software can consume. So a lot of automation tools, things like robotic process automation and other straight-through processing methods, they're built for internal use cases. They're built for workflows within a company. That works well because you can control all variables within a company. You can control the end-to-end process. But the thing is, as soon as you start interacting with another company, they've got their own set of processes, documentations, file types, even languages. And then once you start dealing with 200 or 2,000 different counterparties, it just becomes exponentially more difficult. So what we have built is basically a form of middleware or a gateway that can ingest all sorts of documentation that we deal with day to day and converts it into a format that software understands. This can be helpful through the entire B2B documentation lifecycle, from the onboarding or due diligence process to spend management to statements and settlements, to order management, all the way through to logistics and shipping documentation. We're really focused on the first couple of use cases for now, but the technology we've built can be applied to this entire range of use cases.
You know, it's really fascinating when you think about this. You're like the Duolingo or the Barits of languages, because all of these companies are kind of like little countries with their own languages, right? Even we think about how we build our company, right? We start from the very beginning. We're like, okay, we need to get some kind of database to manage all of our people. And then we maybe get an Excel spreadsheet. And then we think, well, we need to do some project management. And maybe we do some stuff on mundane.com or somewhere else. And then we think, well, we need to maybe have a customer relationship management system. And then we have to have a system that maybe answers the phone and sorts out the phone calls. And we build all of our little systems based on our own personal circumstances. And then our company becomes bigger. And then those systems just stack on top of systems. And suddenly we have a massive company which is built on systems which started like 10, 15 years ago. But now there's 50,000 people using these systems. And then we work on the basis that actually I'm totally different from you. So my circumstances when I started my company were like entirely different. Because of that, the systems that I built upon were entirely different systems. The data that I'm capturing is being captured in an entirely different way. And when you multiply that across the board, actually, it's terrifying. because it's not actually, languages isn't far enough. I don't know how many languages in the world, but there can't be more than a couple of tens of thousands, right? We're talking about millions of variables when it comes to the different systems and data stacks that you're talking about.
We currently deal with about 90 of the major languages. So there is a challenge of this cross-border communication that we all have to deal with at some point, whether it's within our companies or just personally. But then there's this cross-business divide that we have to span as well. So we're dealing with this cross-business and cross-border divide by offering a solution that is fundamentally language agnostic and format agnostic and layout agnostic for all these forms of documentation we deal with.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And so what was the genesis? When did you realize that? Because obviously, I think there's two probably eureka moments. The first eureka moment is, oh my God, this is a monster problem. And so I'd love to know when that hit you, because you have to, it's one of those things you kind of have to be in the middle of the car crash to realize that the car crash is so terrible. And then more importantly, when did you realize that you actually could come up with a solution for this?
Yeah, sure. So I have a background in law and accounting, and probably the accounting experience is more relevant. I work with KPMG in Australia, the US, the UK. I came across this problem in varying degrees in different locations, but the countries I mentioned were fundamentally English speaking, and I worked with companies on a consulting basis, so I was aware of the problem, but I didn't really suffer from it directly and see the problems it could cause if you don't get it right. Later in my career, I took up a post as a CFO in Singapore. And that is where I really started to see this problem firsthand, because if you don't get this foundational information correct from the outset, it causes all sorts of issues down the line around your reporting, your forecasting, your analytics. And the company I was working for was a multinational company. Traditionally, the way that companies dealt with this problem was around either having a team in-house and then at some point outsourcing and then maybe offshoring. But because we're a multinational and we're dealing with counterparties all around the world, we didn't have just one back office operation. We had four, because we had so many different languages and challenges to deal with. Some countries are paper-based. Some countries have EDI, which is electronic data interchange, which is a straight-through processing method. But some have scans, some have native PDFs. So there is this challenge of all these formats and languages that we had to contend with. And that made the supervisor's job much more difficult in order to get any kind of meaningful information or analysis in a timely fashion. So for me, that was when I really started to see this, particularly in Singapore. Southeast Asia, you're surrounded with so many different languages and jurisdictions. So that's when I decided to take this on.
And then, so I want to go and talk a little bit about how you start that, because you have your background in accounting. You're with KPMG, probably the best possible place to understand the magnitude of the problem, because you're sitting with these large organizations and they're throwing their hands up in the air. And I'm sure the organizations are saying, we just acquired this company and this company and this company. We have disparate systems. They can't speak to each other. Our data is all over the place. We can't make any proper decision making because our foundation is incorrect. And I love how you paint that picture of the foundation. It's like a house. It doesn't matter how beautiful the house is that you build on top. If your foundation is flawed underneath, that house is going to collapse. So the foundation is the key to everything we focused on. So one thing is saying, yeah, I'm in KPMG. I see this problem. It's huge. Corporations will literally pay millions, not even thousands, millions, to fix this problem and have it working on a proper foundational basis. But how did you believe that you would be able to build a team of technologists that would be able to take it on head first?
Yeah, just to your second point first, I mean, it is really important. All these tools like automation, RPA, analytics, they all survive with structured data. So you need structured data to make these things work, and that's why we decided that, you know, making sure we had that necessary ingredient really right to start with before we could build a stack on top of that. That is foundational to any automation or digital transformation journey for a company. So we had an inkling. I mean, I had my personal experience, but yeah, I had to be sure. So I met my co-founder in a program called Entrepreneur First, which is a UK talent incubator. We paired up in Singapore, and we had to get out of the building and really prove that this wasn't just a problem that I had seen. So we spoke to 150 plus companies to validate the problem, some of whom became early customers of ours. 149 out of 150 said that it was a massive problem for them, massive. So that was kind of our early validation. Secondary validation was getting paying customers after that. We got a lot of early SME and startup customers to start, really demonstrating to some of our early investors that this was a solution that companies would be willing to pay for. But early last year, 2020, we really started to get a lot of interest from the enterprise.
And I want to, before we go there, Ben, I want to go through that hero's journey. I want to stick a little bit on the difficult times, because that is the measure of the entrepreneur, right? It's as you're going from, because you were in this great job. You're with KPMG. You got to be paid a heck of a lot of money. You're at a really high level, and even in the CFO job, like life, you're you're fat, happy, and rich, right? You're sitting there, you're paying the stuff you need to pay on a monthly basis. You're driving home in your nice car. You get back and you go, "How was your day?" "Oh, it was tough." But you're sitting on a pile of cash. Everything's great, and you suddenly make this decision: I'm gonna go from easy street, where I just get to retire in 30 years' time and I have a nice pension and I travel around the world and I'm with my kids, my grandkids, and I'm going to change that for the most destructive environment on the planet, which is to create innovation and absolutely guarantee poverty for what could be forever, but what hopefully is for a short period of time. Like, just talk about that moment for a second, and kind of how you went through that, and maybe some of the early trials and tribulations at that very, very, very beginning.
It's a little bit too close to home, I think, but it was like that. I'm sure this is the case for a lot of entrepreneurs. Walking away from a comfortable corporate gig that is well paid, safe, your future is fairly secure. That is really hard to walk away from. And then, I'd gone up through the ranks with my peers who have all since gone on to very, very, very well paid CFO or CEO gigs in corporations. So that is hard to walk away from, and sometimes it's quite difficult to see how far these guys and girls get, while I'm chipping away in a fledgling little startup, short on funds, trying to make do with very limited resources. But that is how you really train yourself to become resourceful. Throughout my career, I've had huge access to huge resources and support from various departments. Established marketing teams, business development was never really a problem because you have the backing of a brand. You have analysts, you have back office finance teams. It's all there, and you just have to focus on your job. So that was a really steep learning curve to start with, learning how to wear so many hats and really get on with it and learn how to do all these things to make the startup run. Josh and I, we started out initially, with a little bit of funding. We had to stretch that out. We managed to get some early customers. I don't think it was as difficult a transition for my co-founder because he is an academic and he's used to living a reasonably frugal life. So I don't think it was quite as challenging for him. But I think that also really helps to build a startup with a team that truly believes in what you're doing. The startups that have access to buckets of cash, they can pay to get that team and offer really fat salaries to get the best on board. But when you don't have that cash, you have nothing really but the vision to sell and the dream. So we've got people that truly believe that in what we're doing, and for them, it's not about the money. So I feel more happy about that, having people that are truly driven to make this work and realize the vision as opposed to some paycheck.
And at the beginning, were there moments when you thought, maybe I'm on the wrong path? Maybe this is not going to be the great company that I thought? Especially because you're doing this during a pandemic, right? You're doing it in one of the most difficult times in human history to launch a company. And you're based in Singapore. You were based in Singapore. Well, you were based in Singapore when you started it, right?
Yeah, I mean, quite often. The pandemic was tough. We started our company alongside a lot of other startups who haven't made it. They fell along the wayside, and it was hard for them to get traction. But thankfully for us, we were able to adjust our sales approach. We could reach out to enterprises all around the world and still make it work. But yeah, of course, I mean, it is incredibly challenging, and it is something that's part and parcel with the role of an entrepreneur, I think.
And you fought through, and you brought it, and you built it, and you brought in the technologists. You had your partner, which was really smart. So you then had the really strong operational background of knowing what these large customers are going to be looking for. You then had the technology background to bring in there as well. How did you build out the team to actually get the software ready for deployment?
Yeah, so we had Josh on board, but we actually had 3 PhDs that kind of were involved early on, and the early version of the product was based on this foundational research that these PhDs had done, including Josh, my co-founder. So we were really fortunate in that regard. In fact, I think the pandemic may have helped us because these PhDs weren't able to return to their own countries, and they joined our team to help really focus on the heavy deep tech elements around computer vision, NLP, and machine learning. So that was a bit of a coup for us. After that, we managed to attract talent from other locations in Southeast Asia. Singapore is a quite expensive country to operate in, but I think it's still probably cheaper than the States. And we managed to get team members from Vietnam and Sri Lanka on board as well, who are still with us today.
Fantastic. So you built up the team. So now we've got you've got tremendous domain expertise you brought through. You brought in a phenomenal team to be able to build the product, to make sure that the product was absolutely perfect. You then start making sure you're working on building the customers on the back end. Talk to us a little bit about that first moment when you got the product built, it's ready, you put it out to market, and suddenly a customer's like, we love this. Like, how did that feel? And just talk us through that moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great feeling to close your first deal. And for us, that was a smaller company. That in itself was a great feeling. But we had the opportunity to present to the local partnership board of a big four accounting firm. I won't say which one it is, but basically they invited us in after they heard about what we were building. We presented to a partnership group of about 20 people, all extremely experienced in audit, accounting, tax, advisory, consulting. These people know their stuff. We did a live demo, and they were blown away. The fact that we could ingest any document on the spot, and produce results that could automate any kind of digital workflow. There were people who didn't believe us, so they insisted on sending documents live in that meeting to really test us out, and we were able to get through that as well. So we generate results in a number of seconds, but that was a really fantastic feeling to show what we could do in front of big four accounting firms. So that was probably the big moment that signaled to us that, hey, this is a big enterprise play. This is not something that's just for little startups and SMEs.
Yeah, that's huge. It's
yeah,
huge.
I mean,
go on, yeah.
After that, I mean, we then got introductions to their clients, as well as internal use cases within that accounting firm, but then on to banks, other consulting firms, and we have a number of partnerships now that give us pretty big enterprise leads.
Yeah, it's always fascinating for me the moment, the thing that kicks off a unicorn. Like, what's that moment? And in your case, you're right. Like, you can put something to a customer, and you can win a customer, but you can win a customer with a slightly inferior product because the customers just know how terrible things are, right? They don't know how wonderful things can be. But when you walk in the lion's den of a top five consulting firm, and you've got 5, 10 people in the room who all have gray hairs and suits and ties, and they're looking at you, and their immediate thoughts are, okay, I'll give them 15 or 20 minutes because this ain't going to work. And suddenly you turn them around and you get to the end, you're like, fuck yes.
My palms were sweaty that day. Like it was a pretty nerve-wracking meeting, but yeah, I'm glad it went the way it did.
Yeah, and now it opens the gates for everything because now you're in a place where you can now push this out to enterprises everywhere. You get OEMs within the large five firms themselves. So talk to us about how it's going to develop over the next couple of years. We put money in because it's a no-brainer. We see this as being a huge opportunity, a massive problem that's facing large enterprises, and most large enterprises that they realize it, but they just pray that they can get through tomorrow without having to deal with the problem. It's one of those problems. It's like having a problem kid. It's like, I love my kid, but my kid is a friggin' mess. I just hope tomorrow's okay and nothing terrible happens, right? And you want to say to that parent, look, there's a moment you're just going to have to actually help your kid rather than just praying he doesn't break any more windows tomorrow. And so for you, how have you been finding that those moments have increased in frequency with companies where they've had to start dealing with this? One, because they've realized there's a solution, because I think most of the time they don't believe there's a solution, and that's why they leave the kid, which is their data, in the state that it's in. But second, because they're having these major moments with a more complicated world whereby you just can't, there is no room for error anymore.
I mentioned before that the traditional way of dealing with this kind of thing is offshoring or outsourcing. That's the very manual process. And then in the 80s and 90s, we saw OCR, optical character recognition. But that's old tech. It basically converts an image into text. But what's missing from that story is that it doesn't understand what data is relevant, what data is important. So this is where there's a need to maintain templates and rules for every single style of document that you receive. So people are starting to move to solutions like ours because they can handle any kind of format or layout or style. And we find particular traction with multinationals who have complex supply chains. That's where we're really focused on. You asked me how we see it going. I think we really have to start focusing hard on this particular segment of the market. There are something like 60,000 multinationals in the world, 20,000 of which are in Asia. But a small segment of those have very complex supply chains. This cross-border and cross-business translation issue that I mentioned. So our solution is perfect for those sorts of operations because we can do not just the invoices, but we can also do the delivery notes. We can do their certifications, their service reports, their assurance certificates, etc. And that's actually something we're doing for a couple of companies at the moment, Fortune 500 companies in the industrial and automotive space. So this is a real sector that I think has been underserved in the past, but it's a sector we're finding a lot of traction in. In terms of how we're reaching these customers, we have these great partnerships that I mentioned, the likes of Accenture and then some of the big four firms. We have a partnership with SAP. They have their own tools in this space, but they don't. They do need some support with Asian languages in this part of the world, and that's something we're helping them with. It's publicised online, our partnership, and that's something that we're reaching out to enterprises in India and other countries around Asia.
Fantastic.
That's a fantastic funnel for us.
Great. And then, so you've had great success with fundraising as well since then too. Like, we're obviously, I like to think we're the smartest people in the room, but this is a pretty packed room. There's plenty of people who are now looking at you and seeing this as a great investment opportunity. Talk me through the first check and how you convinced that first check to come in, and what was those conversations like? And then also the other checks that have subsequently followed.
It was a small check, but subsequent to that, we had a check from 500 and some angels. They were basically industry veterans, so long-term corporate accountants. We have an angel who's a ex C-suite executive from one of the SAP entities. So he knows this stuff. He knows it's a problem, and it's an unsolved problem in a lot of respects. So I guess the story that we shared with them and the story that we've had so far just really resonated with those investors. And we were, I guess, selective in what investment we wanted. We wanted to make sure we brought on board strategic investors who could connect us to some of these other enterprises. So that was also something we were looking for in our money. So smart money investment as well.
Fantastic. And that's going to keep on growing. And then, so where are we going to next? So the company has gone from, you've taken it from, you started this new baby. You took it from nothing. You recognized a monster problem that needed to be solved. You then validated it with the very people that you'd been involved with for years. You then had more and more customers come on board, more and more investors come on board. What's next? What's the next big step? Now that we have product fit beautifully in market, is it about more development, and is it about building that product fit onto something even more scalable and more huge? Or is it now just about pushing it out to more and more and more customers and use funding for that? And talk to me about how the synergy of what investment you're going to be raising now over the next 12 months and even 24 months beyond that, and then how that aligns with how the product and the revenue is going to grow.
Yeah, so our next check, we're looking to grow our product and our growth channels. In terms of the product, we've developed a new feature that allows us to train new document models rapidly. We can train one in under a day with very, very small sample sets and get a customer going on a completely new use case. So if you came to me tomorrow and said, Ben, I need you to process Vietnamese birth certificates for this province or this state within Vietnam, then we could do that if you just gave us a small sample set and they could get going. And better yet, we don't have to do that ourselves. The customer can do it themselves. So that interface is so simple and intuitive now that junior, non-technical, non-AI staff can really get involved in the digital transformation journey. So that's something that really expands our use cases rapidly. So we can do this now. We're starting to do that with some customers. They love the fact that they can get junior staff involved in this journey of digitization and automation. So that's one big step that I'm really proud of, because we can then use a lot of these models to resell as APIs to smaller businesses or to developers within enterprises and small businesses trying to build these solutions. We've had access to some very, very rich data sets, multi-data points, multi-language, and we can have a very broad suite of APIs that is fundamentally self-service. So that's something we're looking at in the next 18 months. On top of that, we are looking to expand the use cases, like I said, down the B2B communication value chain. So we've got the spend management, the AP, the invoicing. We've got the counterparty due diligence, the onboarding, the KYC. We can do that really easily. We have models that can support companies in multiple languages already. We're looking to expand down logistics and shipping, order management and service management, so we can really be the single piece of middleware, the single gateway that companies can connect to interface with other parties. Wow. So that's something we really want to nail down in the next 18 months. Also, add additional integrations into the likes of SAP, other RPA providers, RPA being an automation tool that is good for internal use cases. But like I said, it's not going to work to interface with other companies or other parties because you simply don't control that process or that UI. So these are the main areas of growth where we're looking to push into on our roadmap. We are based in Asia. We have a team in Asia. We are looking to get feet on the ground in the States. We managed to land Fortune 500 customers without being in the States. So imagine what we can do when we have actual sales presence in the country. And I'd also like to emphasize the fact that, I mean, although we do all these languages, it doesn't mean we're a fit for just Asian companies or European or African companies. We are a big deal for American companies, North American companies who are trying to be truly global companies. Asia has 60% of the population in the world, something like 38% of the GDP. And North American companies expanding to Asia, they don't want to have all these piecemeal solutions to do different types of use cases that when they can just have one. And that's what some of our customers are starting to realize. They've got, invoice processing solutions, they've got KYC solutions, they've got different solutions for different document types. When we can do it all, eventually we can be the single point of interface with external counterparties, not just in English, but offshore as well.
Incredible. And then let's finish it up with, if you can let us know, what's the raise look like? Because the vision is huge. It's like everything with these companies, and you just go deeper and deeper in with them so that you become the relation that just always stays for dinner. You never go home. You just live with them for the rest of their lives. So help everybody understand, how much money are you raising right now? Where's the investment opportunity for any investors that are listening through to this? And then also talk a little bit about, let people have your email and your contact details, just your email actually, so folks can contact you directly.
My email is ben@staple.io. Our website is staple.io, just staple singular, not staples plural.
Very good. And then anybody can always contact me as well at brian@expertdojo.com, and I'm always happy to share Ben's details. Look, it's a really small, easy round. 1.5 propels the company even further. It's a proven product. It's a deep domain experienced team of folks that are actually building this. You got a stack of PhDs and now way more developers in the background. They're pulling in companies from all over the world, including the US. As soon as you're ready, Ben, my house is your house. We got our place here, which is going to be the Staple headquarters right here in Santa Monica, and we are going to colonize this place, one staple at a time. Hey, and so Ben, listen, it's been a pleasure to have you. It's been great to have you on the show. I'm so pleased that we've made an investment into you. Investors, you know how to contact Ben. You know how to contact me. This one is going to catch fire. It's already caught fire, but actually you have a chance to get in at a phenomenal valuation. Let's make this thing fly and turn it into the beautiful unicorn that it shall become. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks very much, Brian.